Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Newcastle. My name's Iain Mackay. I'm your host today, and with me, my fellow black and whiters, I've got Nicola Pringle Adams. How are you doing today, Nicola?
I'm very well, thank you. That was a very delicate introduction.
Thank you. And I've also got Mr. Shouty himself, Michael Grameslaw. How are you, Michael?
I call myself the energy of the team, but that's fine. I understand. I understand how shouty can come across, but I'm all good, thank you. How about you?
I only mentioned that because Nicola accused me of being gentle, something I'm not being accused of for a long time, actually. But thank you very much indeed for that. We are here to unpick the bones out of yesterday's match against Bournemouth, which I went to. I had such high hopes. It was meant to be our 10th win on the bounce, our 7th straight win in the Premier League. It was going to jump us into third as we hunted down. Arsenal dropped points, by the way. Did you see that?
I know.
As we hunted down the top two. Sadly, that didn't prove to be the case, as we were well and truly whooped by a fantastic Bournemouth side, actually. They were good from start to finish. Where do we start with that? I'll come to you first, Michael, because Nick has asked me to. Where did it all go wrong?
Yeah, I think it's one of those where, to start off, I think we were all a bit overconfident going into the game. I said against in the Wolves build-up that I was more concerned for Bournemouth and Wolves, I do have to say, than I was for Villa, Man United and Tottenham. I probably should have been terrified of Bournemouth. It's easy to say they out Newcastle, which is what I've seen a lot on social media over the last 24 hours. But my immediate observations are actually more to do with Bournemouth, and you can really see why they're so inconsistent. They have so many injuries, but they still play the best football in the league, because I didn't think we played well, but it's one of those that every opposition fan, when Newcastle played them, says, "Oh, why does everyone play terribly against Newcastle?" It's not, we make them play that way, and it was exactly the same with Bournemouth against Newcastle. Without a shadow of doubt, I thought they were the best team I've seen at St James's Park against us, maybe other than that Borussia Dortmund side that, made the Champions League final. So that's big praise for Bournemouth, I would say, but they play at such a high pace, they're direct, and they bypass that midfield. Our best area of the pitch is that midfield. If that's bypassed, and we can't get Bruno, Tonali, and even Joe Linton at times on the ball, we are going to struggle, and that's exactly what we saw. We couldn't get Bruno and Tonali on the ball, and when we could, they were so press heavy on Bruno. I think it was fouled 4 times in the opening 15 minutes. It might have been opening 20, but it was definitely a lot of fouls early doors, and he just couldn't get on the ball, and because of that, we struggled. If we can't play our natural game, we don't win games. But at the end of the day, Bournemouth, fantastic. And I could say 100 things that were wrong, but we went into the game on such great form that there's still reasons to be positive. 4-1 doesn't look great, but it's not really any different if we'd lost 2-1.
Well, I like to think that beating Wolves 3-0 and losing to Bournemouth 4-1, it's just the same as drawing those two games, isn't it?
But with
So
one
in
extra
reality,
point, get in.
in reality, we're better off than just drawing those two games, in which case we still would have been unbeaten. So I'm trying to get there's some small crumbs of comfort to be got here. Newcastle out Newcastled. What do you think about that, Nicola?
Look, Michael started off by saying that we went into the game, as in us, overconfident. I'm just going to put my 2 pence in there a little bit. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think there is. We've seen a side of Newcastle that we haven't seen for a long time. We went on a 9-game unbeaten win. We've seen our midfield become the best midfield in the league. We've seen Isak become the best striker in the league, arguably Europe. And, I don't think there's anything wrong with having a little bit of overconfidence in the team. But what then does come with that, obviously, is when things like yesterday happen and we are now sitting in this self-pitying of wallowing of what we actually watched yesterday. What I will say is, as well, is I don't think Newcastle actually played bad. I just think Bournemouth played a lot better than what we do. And in turn with that, obviously, because we were challenged on our home turf, we got messy, we got sloppy, and Bournemouth just took advantage and quite like Michael says, they were the better team, and they managed to put 4 past us, which I haven't seen a team do that in a long time. So yeah, they were great. They were 10 out of 10 on it. They were probably been the only side that looked like they wanted to play us and were hungry for the win. And they deserved the win. There's nothing really more to say other than I don't think we played bad. We just had played a better opponent, and that's the game of
I'm
football.
going to have I'm going to have to take issue with both of you telling me that there's nothing really anything more to say. When I've only done 5 minutes of this podcast, you are going to have to get on it.
I'll
Now,
figure
I
something
agree with
out.
some of what you said. I agree with what some of you said. I'm not sure we were we were confident, but I think we were rightly confident. I never saw any of the Premier League previewers previewing a solid Bournemouth away win. I watched 2 of the Bournemouth podcasts match previews. One of them was hoping they could pinch a draw, and the other one predicted that they would lose 2-1 to Newcastle. Now, these are the guys that have watched Bournemouth over the last, well, since November, since they last lost, and they thought they were going to get turned over. So I don't think we were overconfident. Certainly not what the Bournemouth guys were most concerned about, and which is a fact, that they were missing 9 of their first teamers from that squad. That's just frightening. Or he's picking the wrong first team anyway, because Bournemouth were fabulous. I mean, Lewis Cook is a dodgy midfielder, but what a brilliant right back he was yesterday. Or maybe
Yeah.
that's just what we made him look like. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's more that,
I don't
to
know.
be honest.
Now, and I think I might take a little bit of issue with what you said there, Nicola, about that we didn't play that badly. Part 2, we're going to unpick 1 or 2 of our players' performances, and I, for one, don't think it just went down to Bournemouth being much better than we were. I think there were certainly 2 or 3 players at the very least, 6 when you then add the substitutes who came on, who were miles off the pace for their game. And obviously, when every player in the team is effectively having a stinker for whatever reason, that's when you lose 4-1 at home, isn't it? Now, one thing which you might not remember, because you might not, whether you had been old enough. I do remember a game when we were on our charge to win the championship at one stage. I can't remember which campaign it was, but we were steamrollering teams. And then Fulham came to St James's Park, and Fulham absolutely played us off the park. They out Newcastle that day, and they won 4-1 as well. If only I'd seen that, I could have had a correct score bet on and made a fortune. So the good thing after that is that Newcastle simply dusted themselves down and got on back to steamrolling teams. So I agree with you, Michael. I don't think it's the end of the road. I don't think our players have suddenly
all.
become terrible. I just think that maybe it was a game too far. I'm going to pause early there and ask Nicola to give us the first advert, and we'll get into unpicking some of the individual performances in part 2.
Lovely. Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it is super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr.
Thank you very much indeed, Nicola.
No
Well
problem.
done. Part 2 then, the Newcastle players.
I'm intrigued
Yes,
who you're going to
Bournemouth
talk
was
about
super,
here.
right? Bournemouth was super. I was going to ask you who your man of the match was, but I know it's difficult to pick one out. By the way, I did think of somebody at the end of the game who actually played really well on the Newcastle side,
I've
and
got one.
nobody's mentioned it. Martin Dubravka. Not really at fault for any of those goals. Maybe he could have got down a bit quicker to the second one, but they know to put it low down. He made some great saves, and he was fine with his distribution. I don't know why anyone, or compared to Shah's distribution, Shah announcing himself that he's back, comes on in the second half and plays a square ball just onto the penalty spot, just about straight to their centre forward, which they didn't score from, amazingly. But God, that happens so often, so often. So I'm exempting Martin Dubravka from my critical comments. Now, we've got the best 2 young fullbacks in the Premier League. Not on yesterday's evidence.
Yeah, fair enough.
Lewis Hall looked like he had Tino Livramento's boots on, and Tino Livramento looked like he had Lewis Hall's boots on, and they have different sized feet, by the way. I thought I don't know what it was. They looked slow. Is that just because the Bournemouth wingers were so super fast? Maybe they were sluggish. Maybe they were thinking slow. What did you think about our wonder kids in fullback, Nicola?
Well, I feel like anything I say, people are just going to disagree with now. Because I say I don't think they
Why?
played bad. However, I do.
That's the point.
This is the point, yeah. I didn't really so much notice Lewis Hall have a bad game, but maybe it's because I was probably too focused on Tino having a bit of a dodge of a game. I mean, I've commented on Tino a couple of times, particularly before this unbeaten run, where I think he's a great player, but sometimes he does get caught off guard and he drops out of position and is easily caught away from where he's supposed to be, sort of thing. So yesterday I did sort of see him, I'm going to just say struggle a little bit with the Bournemouth winger. As for Lewis Hall, though, I don't think he played terribly, but maybe it's because I was too busy focusing on the right-hand side. Whenever Tino has a bad game, my confidence does drop him a little bit, and I feel really bad saying that because he's just had 9 great games. So maybe I'm just being a little bit too harsh, but I have said before that he has up and down times playing, so maybe he was just a
He was
down.
definitely having a bit of a downtime yesterday.
Yeah.
I will observe that when it came to trying to make a sow's purse, no, what is it? A silk purse out of a sow's ear. Eddie chose to switch Tino over onto the left and took Lewis Hall off, which I think was the right decision out of the pair of them. Michael, did you notice Lewis Hall playing as though he was blindfolded?
Well, I have to be honest. Out the back, well, I think it was 5, 6 actual defenders that were on the pitch. I actually thought Hall had the better of the game, but what I will say is when Hall was shocking, he was dreadful. There's one moment in the centre of the pitch which is going to be burned on me for the rest of my life, and it's where Lewis Hall is in front of of David Brooks. He has the pace of David Brooks. David Brooks isn't exactly strong, and Hall just falls to the floor. And I'm sorry for the impact that probably had on my microphone, but I've just done the little Flowsbury flop there. But it's one of those where he just falls to the floor and there's barely any contact on him whatsoever. And yeah, it was Hall's probably worst game for us. Every wing back has them when you're a bit off the pace. However, he was probably the one that had the least excuse because he wasn't up against Otara, he wasn't against Cliver, he wasn't against Semenyo. He was mainly against Davy Brooks, who is a great player, but doesn't really have the blistering pace that Tino Livramento was up against for most of the game. Yeah, Hall was poor. Livramento, I've said it for a little while. I don't think he's as good as people say. I think he could be. He definitely has the potential to be. But from the evidence, he had a great game against Arsenal, was decent against Tottenham, but I can't remember too many other games in this run where he's been really, really good. And that's why Trippier started to find himself back in the team. It's not a criticism. It's just maybe we've overhyped him a little bit to start off because he was so good in a purple patch when he first joined. He will be fantastic, but he's just not there yet.
I thought Trippier was even worse than Livramento when he came on and started playing at right back. By the way, he
wasn't great.
definitely looks like he's got a ticket booked somewhere. And if that is the alternative, let's stick with Tino Livramento because the Trippier was awful. But I think you also have to factor in maybe Eddie's tactics. We've done very well with playing the ball out for a midfielder coming short, whether that's Tonali and then on to Bruno and playing through the midfield. But Bournemouth were wise to that. They were wise to that in the first minute, and they were wise to it 3 or 4 more times until they then scored after 5.5 minutes. Why we persisted in that, and we did all the way through the whole game. We kept trying to play out from the back, and that's where they out Newcastle. We gave the ball away so many times, so it's hard to blame the back four for that if that's the instructions that they've got. I thought Tonali looked after the ball as well as he possibly could, certainly better than Bruno did, as evidenced by the
Yeah.
second goal. That was a hospital pass to Bruno for the second goal, was it
I was
not?
going to
From
say,
Byrne?
I can't blame Bruno for that personally. To play that pass there, you are basically asking someone to lose the ball.
Through the ball, yeah.
And Byrne had a shocker. Now, that is another thing as well. Byrne was horrible. When I saw Fabian Schär coming on in the second half, I was sitting there going, you know what, that's brilliant. He's took Byrne out the firing line. Oh, wait, no, he's took off Sven Botman. So Botman must have had, maybe a little bit of a flu illness that has gone around the camp a little bit. But I thought to keep Dan Byrne on, and he was getting a lot of criticism on social media, etc. Bit in the ground as well, from what I hear. So it's one of those where maybe he took off the wrong centre back, but there's probably reasons why he took off Botman. And yeah, when Schär came on, he wasn't any better.
He's been poorly as well, though, hasn't he?
Yeah,
It was a tactical switch apparently, because Eddie wanted to get more of the ball playing skills that Schär would bring, more of those long raking passes straight to Clivett on the edge of the box, which he did 6 minutes to the second half and escaped from. Which, no, it didn't work. It didn't work. I think it might end up being a really, really quite a positive thing, though, to get kicked up the backside, all of
100%.
them, quite so hard at this stage when there's still 16 games of the season to go. Because let's be honest, if we can go on another run of 1 loss in 7, we've only got to do that twice, and we are bang up there.
Yeah.
But God, sitting through it was so painful. Our killer midfield of Brunaliton. Do you see what I did then? Brunaliton midfield. Yes. They tried. I thought Joe Linton was super robust. He just got rougher and rougher as he got more and more frustrated. Started a fight at one stage, and they both only got booked somehow.
Doesn't sound like him.
But yeah, they were outmuscled by. Was it Tyler Adams and was it Christie that was the other midfielder?
Yeah, Ryan Christie.
But they're just workmanlike players. How did they do that so well? Is that how brilliant Areola is?
What I would say with that is you could tell. One of the things I'd sort of noted was when I mentioned why Bournemouth are so inconsistent. The point I didn't mention was a lot of it, I think, goes down to the referee. If the referee allows them to play the way they do, and by the way, it's not a bad thing. It's the same way Newcastle play against big teams. You disrupt them, you play a bit more direct, and if the referee lets the game flow, he doesn't give a yellow card early on. He had the chance to a couple of times, to Adams and to Christie. Then, if he lets the game flow that way, Bournemouth are absolutely fantastic. But if you had a different referee and he gave those yellow cards early on, they don't stamp their authority as much as what they used to. And as much as we love Tonali and Bruno, if they're not on it, they're not diving into tackles. If Joe Linton's not on it, he's going around elbowing people, kicking them, and I don't endorse that. It's not very good. But those two, they'll try, but they're not the kind of players that'll rough you up if things aren't going their way. If they're fired up and the crowd's behind them, then they do. Tonali did it a little bit more than Bruno, but Adams and Christie were just too physical for one that day.
Well, I had 5 players to commit 2 fouls, and the 3 players on the Bournemouth team that I picked, they all did, probably more.
Yeah.
But neither Gumarish nor Tonali committed 2 fouls, so that must be 1 foul each. Mm-hmm. So we committed 7 fouls in the game, and Bournemouth committed 18, which I think is a testament to how physical they were. Yeah. But I didn't feel like they were kicking us off the park at all. Super through the last half an hour in disrupting the flow of the game. Yeah. We sat and wondered how much of the last 30 minutes where the ball was actually not in play, because it was certainly a lot more than the 7 that we got added on to at the end.
Thankfully, it was only 7.
Fair play.
Oh, no.
Fair play to Bournemouth. Anthony Gordon had a little bit of a stinker. Jacob Murphy, was he there? Was he there, Jacob Murphy?
I wouldn't have thought so.
Bournemouth.
And Alexander Isak, well, they just choked off any supply to him at the source. And I mean, he didn't go and hunt for it very much, but there again, with what was going on in the midfield, I'm not surprised he steered clear of that, because he's only got thin legs, hasn't he? So yeah, Newcastle collectively a stinker. I know Joe Willett came on because I saw the board being held up. I think he played on the left. Don't think the ball went anywhere near him.
Nah.
Trippier and Shah were dreadful. Where was Lewis Miley? Would he have changed it? Maybe.
I'm not sure because I think Bournemouth do like to play they played around our midfield more than anything, direct up towards the wing backs, and they didn't let Tonali get on the ball that much, Gamares either, and when they did, it was quite ineffective. Maybe Miley would have done something different, maybe he would have brought something different to the game, but I think when you look at the way we played, overall it's going to take much more than one young lad, no matter how talented he is, to have fixed that crock of mess that we had at the time.
You're right, Michael. I'm going to ask you to do the GSPN advert for us. And when we come back, we're going to talk positively about how insignificant a single defeat is in a 38-game season. Let's look forward to what effect it might have. Fire away.
The Global Sports Podcast Network is changing the face of football podcasting with dedicated daily content for every Premier League team, women's football, and a dedicated Premier League wrap-up in 5 different languages. Hopefully they don't talk about Newcastle on that one. But this is your one-stop shop for your daily football fix. Find the GSPN wherever you find the very best podcasts.
Beautiful.
And how many teams do they talk about?
Well, hopefully it's 19 and they've left in fact 18 because they'd have to leave Bournemouth off as well. But I think they're covering all 20.
They're covering all of them, aren't they? All of them is the answer. So yes, so the end of, and let's be fair, let's try and start picking the positives out. We know how disappointed we are and how overconfident or maybe how complacent we were going into that match because we'd won 9 on the bounce. So that's hopefully a big wake-up call so that we don't ever get to that until we've won another 9 on the bounce. That's a positive. But where does it leave us for the rest of the season, Nicola?
I don't think we need to panic. We knew we were going to lose a football match at some point, and obviously it happened to be what I'm going to call our bogey team, Bournemouth, because we just seem to never perform well against them, or I don't think we've won against them whilst Eddie's been in charge, have we? So I don't think we need to panic. What I will say is it's good that we've got that result out of our system to avoid, like you say, any complacent issues further down the line, because I'm going to argue that we're probably about to go into a very crucial part of our season. I'm not going to mention anything on that other than the fact that we've got another leg of the Carabao Cup and we're going into a very important time. So I think it's good that we've got out of our system. All we need to do, dust ourselves off and we go again. Just don't look back and just crack on. There's no point of focusing on what went wrong. It went wrong and just move on, learn from it, move on and take it in what we've got next. Southampton away.
Yeah.
We've got next.
Southampton away, Fulham at home. Oh, Southampton away, and then we're back at home against Arsenal in the Carabao Cup semi-final. And if ever we needed a kick up pants to remind us that Arsenal could, in theory, come and play us off the park and score more than 2 goals, Bournemouth just showed how to win by 3 goals at St James's Park yesterday. So hopefully, nobody will be reading what everybody was talking about on social media and in the papers that Newcastle are already there.
Don't forget though, the Carabao Cup ball's different, so Mikel Arteta will just blame that. So it's fine.
That's true. That's true. The Carabao
different
Cup
from the Premier League ball.
Yeah.
Michael, you're not panicking, are you?
Not at all. I think the game I would compare it to the most was when Villa decimated us 3-0 in the season we finished 4th. And you know what we did after that? We beat Spurs 6-1. So, Southampton, put the big boy pants on. You're going to be terrified and you're going to lose 6-1. You're going to take a whooping and it's going to be an all-round good time. We're going to go into Fulham. Then we're going to rectify the 3-1 defeat we had earlier in the season. And we're going to put the final nail in the coffin of Arsenal's season. In fact, no, they've still got the Champions League. Yeah, you know what? Real Madrid can put the final nail in. We'll put the second final nail in the coffin. And we'll go into the toughest run of the season as confident as we possibly can. And everything's going to be dandy.
Absolutely.
Is that away at City, a home to Nottingham Forest, then away at Liverpool, I think, if memory
Yeah, I'm not
serves.
terrified for that at all. It's going
We
to be
shouldn't be.
tough, but it's going to be good.
We've never thrown a stinker in against one of the big teams, have we? Let's be honest. The
Not
disappointments
really.
this season have come against West Ham, against Brighton,
Mm.
and
Yeah,
and that wasn't a disappointing performance. That was just an amazing run of uh, misfortune in front of goal.
Yep.
And Bournemouth. So yeah, I suppose we weren't very good when we lost at Chelsea, but you can lose 2-1 at Chelsea and play really well as well. So that wasn't quite so disappointing. Not when we then beat them in the Carabao Cup 3 days later, of course.
No.
exactly.
Excellent.
Exactly.
So, is there any implication in that result for the transfer window, which has still got 2 weeks to run? Michael.
Yeah, parts of me, and this is the brain talking, saying we're probably not going to be able to bring many people in, if anyone, who could improve the squad. Now, I don't listen to that very much. I tend to go more with the heart. But I think realistically, you look at that and go, we need another winger for when maybe Harvey Barnes is injured and we don't have that different style of player to bring on the wings. Almiron's leaving. I don't think he would have made any difference to anything, whether he'd started or even was in his form of 2 years ago. But I think Murphy and Gordon were so ineffective against Bournemouth that it just showed you need a winger for when they're off the boil. They've been brilliant the last 10 games. Can't criticise them for how they've played this season.
Yeah.
But when they're off the boil like that, you need someone, dare I say it, like an Alan Saint-Maximin, who literally put us on his shoulders against Bournemouth a few times back in the day when they had worse managers than Areola. And could drive us to a result. I don't think we really have anyone who isn't starting who can do that at the minute. But you buy one of those players, it's going to cost you 50 million. So I don't think anything for the winter window. I think it's a reminder that we should be looking at targets. We should be getting scouting network out there. We already have, let's be honest, but maybe we just need to look for something that's just a little bit different to what we have.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Michael, except I don't agree with you. I mean, surely these scouts, they've had a big summit this weekend, haven't they? All the Newcastle scouts. I mean, they must all have lists and lists and lists of players that they've been watching. And there must be people in there that they can go and get for the same as we're getting in for Miggy, for example. And then it's a free bet. But also, what about the loan market? That doesn't cost very much other than wages, does it? What do you think, Nicola?
Oh, God, the transfer window literally gives me anxiety. I'm not going to lie, having to talk about it because we don't know the state that Newcastle is in. As in, by that, I mean, I know we're not in a financial state, but obviously you've got all the regulations and you don't know if you're going to break them or not. But I think what yesterday did highlight, and what I do agree with Michael on, is it kind of highlighted our, I wouldn't say squad depth as such, but like our rotation. So like when he brought the subs on, they made little to no impact whatsoever. Whereas
Yeah.
we really, and it is the right hand side. I keep repeating myself, and I'm absolutely sick of repeating myself, and I'm sure the listeners are as well. But it games like yesterday highlight how weak that right hand side is. And yeah, I totally agree with Michael. I don't think poor Miggy, bless him, would have made any difference, and he probably would have made the game worse, to be honest. I'm going to put that out there. But yeah, I think Miggy's time is completely done now with Newcastle, bless him. So yeah, I think it does highlight the fact that we do need to be out there and getting a right winger particularly. What frustrates me the most is though we've been talking about a right winger now. What we're talking, maybe a year and a half, 2 years, maybe I don't know. It's been quite a
Yeah, it's
while,
been a
and
while.
yet we're now in the January 2025 transfer window, and we're still talking about a right winger. I don't understand the hold up. Well, I do understand the hold up, but I'm almost like, agree with you, Ian. These scouts, they would be given names forward every day, every week, every weekend. Why aren't we bringing anyone in? Even if it is like until the end of the season on a loan deal, there shouldn't be any sort of restriction there. I don't know. I don't know how. Well, I do know how it works, but I'm not sure what's involved in the finer print. So yeah,
There are, there are big players out there for, 10, 12, 15 million. Bournemouth centre-half, Huijsen. He was 15 million, wasn't he? I think. And
Probably
Villa
about
just picked
40,
up.
50 now, isn't he? He's been
Well,
incredible.
Villa just picked up a winger that we've had on our list for a year or two. And
Yeah.
I don't think they paid more than 20 million for him. Do you know Marlin? How much was
Yeah.
that
It
deal?
was 20 I think it was 20 million plus add-ons, but what I'll add with Marlon as well is there's a reason Dortmund are no longer playing him, because his biggest asset is his pace and his finishing on the right for a right winger, and he hasn't been really supplying that for Dortmund at the minute. Now, whether he does for Villa or not could turn around, but I generally don't think that'll be a great signing. But for 20 million, it's worth the risk. I do agree
3
there are
roles.
some
This is
players
what I
out.
mean. This just refreshes the squad, even if they don't get on the pitch, to be bringing one or two new players into the squad in January. Anyway, we shall leave it there. There's still 2 weeks. I've got my fingers crossed that they can find some change down the back of the treatment table that allows them to go into the transfer market and bring one or two new faces in. We certainly looked like we needed a good refresh sitting through that debacle yesterday. But it wasn't a debacle. Bournemouth just played very, very, very well. I'm very impressed with them. Anyway,
Me too.
thank
Just a
God I
blip.
haven't got to play them till next season. Unless we get them in the FA Cup. Don't think about it. I'm going to call time there. Thank you very much indeed for discussing that. It wasn't as painful as I thought it was going to be. Thank you very much, Nicola. Thank you very much, Michael. Thanks, all you Geordie fans out there across the world. I hope we haven't depressed you too much. But we'll be back. We'll be back to talk about our game against Southampton later in the week. And yeah, that's where we win 6-1, according to Michael.
Come on.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.